Welcome.
Thanks, Bijon.
Hey, so I think let us kick off. So we're at the top of the hour here. So for all the guests that are joining, we appreciate the topic of discussion here today is customer engagement as the foundation for financial wellness. I think it's safe to say even before the pandemic, many financial services organizations were thinking about financial wellness as a core part of their strategy, whether it was to their core target customer base or even a subset of their customer base. Our panelists today will discuss how they're looking at deploying a variety of technologies to better engage, educate, and build relationships with their customers. So with that, what I thought we would do is go into some quick introductions. I'd like to start with my two colleagues, Aakash Shah and Scott Johnson. Aakash is from Green Dot and Scott is from Western Union. I'd love for them to introduce themselves, a little bit about their role in Remit as it relates to financial services, ideally as well. And then I'll introduce myself, and we'll get into the heart of the conversation for the next 45 minutes. Aakash, how about you? Would you like to go first?
Yeah, thanks, Bijon. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Appreciate your time today. So I lead operations for Green Dot, which includes a variety of services that I lead for Green Dot. One, customer experience, customer support. It also includes risk operations, which is primarily dispute investigations. Additionally, we have payment processing operations that includes our relationships with Visa, MasterCard, ATM networks, as well as just a transaction processing. And then finally, it also includes supply chain, which is card manufacturing, card personalization, and all the distribution related to it. We're serving approximately 6 million customers nationwide. We have 5,000 associates worldwide that are supporting this operations. And then we also have some large strategic partners that we lead operations for on behalf of, I should say, such as Apple, Uber, Intuit, Stash, and many of our partners worldwide. So that's kind of the remit of my work.
Wonderful. And we're going to get to some of the banking as a service related work that you were just referencing as well when we talk. So Scott, love to get some background on you as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Johnson. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, where it's snowing today, which is kind of crazy. I lead product for Western Union Business Solutions, which is the business payments arm of Western Union. We help companies of all shapes and sizes with their cross-border payables and receivables needs. We also offer a host of FX risk management products, various hedging instruments that businesses can use to help to manage and control their FX risk. And I think as business has increasingly globalized, it's become more and more important to really understand and manage FX actively for businesses in order to control their bottom line. So I think we've got some interesting learnings about financial wellness for business to share over the next 40 minutes or so.
Perfect. Yeah, no, we definitely want to talk about that because that's not something one typically thinks about in the construct of financial wellness. We often think about individuals. We may think about those that are unbanked or underbanked, but that universe is actually quite large. So looking forward to that. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bijon Mehta. I run the financial services vertical here at Twilio. And for those who are not familiar with Twilio, we're the world's leading customer engagement platform that helps customers build differentiated experiences at scale. In a nutshell, what we do is we help organizations embed communications within their mobile or their web application. Things like voice, video, SMS, chat, email, and all of these help our customers to build customer engagement at scale and in a compliant way. So with that, I'd like to first start with you, Aakash, recognizing kind of your focus is very much on the consumer-facing side. Can you give us a sense of the range of things that Green Dot is doing to help customers? And it would be even good to understand kind of how you define financial wellness at Green Dot.
Yeah, and I think to answer your question, the first thing we probably need to understand about Green Dot is what do we do and why we do it. So, you know, our philosophy is that we want to empower customers and businesses, but maybe not as prevalently as Scott's focus, but customers and businesses on empowering them on payments and banking solutions that they don't typically have access to, because our target audience and market is the underserved and underbanked and unbanked population in the United States. Last year, a recent study showed that about 25% of households in the United States are either underbanked or unbanked. That's about 80 to 90 million people in the United States who go day to day primarily using cash as their main payments option. And so and they don't actually have access to pricey options that some of our larger financial institutions offer. And so things like getting paid and being able to shop online, being able to protect from fraud, trying to start their own banking relationship for the first time, building credit, things like that aren't as offered or as optional for this customer base. So when you think about our customer base, they're not sitting in their pocket with, say, 4 or 5 credit cards. And if something went wrong on that one credit card or one debit card, they have alternative options that they can use to sort of go on about their life. Our customer base actually gets affected quite significantly because of limited options. So really, when we think about financial wellness, is whatever focus we have on customer, we need to amplify it because we know of the limited options and the set of situations that our customers can get into that, quite frankly, you could describe it as existential.
Right.
And so financial wellness is not an option. It is the survival that they believe they need. And I think that's a super, it's only been amplified even more during this COVID environment, where a cash economy completely cratered because of lack of options where you could use cash.
Right, right. No, that's actually very important. We're gonna come back and touch a little bit upon that because, you know, clearly we're moving to a world that is starting to go cashless. You know, I can't really recall the last time I've used cash, and maybe part of it is I haven't gone out of my house in several months. But even before then, you know, I would have the same wad of money that I've had for months, just because we tend to use credit cards. So that's a critical need that I think we need to be thinking about for individuals, which is how do we broaden their ability to access the non-cash world and all of the tools that are available to it. So Scott, you clearly are focused on the business side. You know, from a financial wellness point of view, how do you kind of look at this you know, the definition of financial wellness, and then also the kinds of services that you can provide under that auspices?
Sure. So we cater to a lot of different types of businesses at Western Union Business Solutions, but really our core business is helping small and medium-sized enterprises. So companies that don't have treasury departments and haven't hired expertise in FX markets to be able to really actively manage their risk. So the cost of a cross-border payment can be significant, both in terms of the FX markup on the payment and the fees, and the cost of losing capital to what can be a slow and pretty opaque correspondent banking system, particularly for larger principal transactions. So we see financial wellness in a couple of ways. One is helping our customers really understand FX risk and build strategies to manage it so that they can understand if they're buying an input cross-border or selling a cross-border, that ultimately they understand the price of that input or the cost to their customer, and can manage that, the FX risk part of that transaction, to ensure that they're profitable at the end of the day, and that a market move in the wrong direction doesn't sabotage their bottom line. So to do that, we have an array of scenario planning tools in WooEdge, which is our flagship platform, that allows customers to input data on their expected payables and receivables and model out what changes in exchange rate could do to the
Mhm.
either the cost of the payment if they're buying something, or the cost of their customer's payment and the FX conversion associated with that if they're selling it. And then we have an array of different forwards and FX options that we help our customers implement. So ultimately, they can control that risk and have a budget rate that they can hit at the end of the year, so that they remove FX risk, or at least mitigate FX risk from the equation. The other thing we help with is just getting money around the world quickly. For a lot of businesses, getting a payment a day earlier can be the difference between making payroll or not. And so having a receivables process that's really quick, or a payables process that allows them to manage their working capital up until the last minute and send payment as late as possible, really helps to improve cash flow and improve working capital, and help businesses manage day to day.
I mean, it sounds like there are a lot of advisory related, sort of aspects of what you do. I mean, clearly there's some technology that you're using. How many people, do you have on the team that's sort of working with these organizations? How do you scale that? Certainly given by some of the challenges over the last 4 to 5 months.
Yeah, I think customer engagement is at the core of it. In order to really build an FX risk management strategy, you need to understand your customer's business. So it is labor intensive. We have a team of hedging managers who work with our account managers to really understand our customer's business, understand their strategy, and build the right FX risk mitigation plans around that. So it's not something today we're scaling with technology, because we think that relationship is important, and building that understanding and mutual trust is a pretty critical part of doing this well.
Right. No, absolutely. I think if anything, technology can be an enabler to your relationship managers and an advisors, not a replacement for, just given the complexity for some people when it comes to the foreign exchange markets and how to understand that. Let me switch gears a little bit and, kind of hone in around kind of COVID-19, and, we're kind of 6 months in now. Aakash, for you, how, what sort of changes in servicing have you seen? What kind of demand has kind of come to the surface from your customers in light of what's been going on?
Yeah, so let's maybe establish a fundamental to your question about customers. We don't expect ever in our lifetime that a customer will say, I want something more expensive, I want it slower, and I want to have more complexity in getting to that thing, whatever that thing may be. So that's just the basics of human nature. I think what we're seeing is sort of a faster shift to requiring online access and sort of e-commerce capability to do sort of the day-to-day work that the customers needed to do. So I'll give 2 examples that I think are really relevant. So one in particular is around people that shop with or bank with us. They're paying bills in person. They're paying utility bills in person. They're paying cable bills in person. These cable shops, these utility shops are closed. They're actually encouraging customers to go online, not encouraging, actually requiring to go online. Now, these are customers who may not have ever done banking in their life. And so their options today are walking into one of our partnership stores like a Walmart, picking up a Green Dot debit card, loading cash onto it, and then making a online payment. Now you just got introduced for the first time to banking that you may not have wanted to as a choice, but now as a forced choice. So we're seeing a pretty substantial growth in new customers coming onto the platform. What this is revealing to us, sort of as a second example, is they're getting introduced to things that they've never done before, like online remittance, paying bills online, or even P2P transfers and things like that. So we're educating a population for the first time. So what they expect is really quick servicing, really thoughtful education, but also very simple tools to actually execute this without high cost. High cost is really critical. And that brings me to my second example. We partner with Intuit today, and we believe about half of the country does their taxes on TurboTax through Intuit. One of the things we offer is those customers to get their tax return on a personalized debit card. Instead of, because the alternative option, what they typically would have is a check in the mail, which typically takes another 6
Right.
weeks. You have to take the check to a check cashing place, which many of them are closed. And then there's a fee to actually get that cash. But the cash is now limited to only paying in person, which is also now limited because of e-commerce growth, et cetera. So you start to think about our customers. And the piece I mentioned earlier, they'll never want it slower, more expensive, and more complicated, is only been exasperated by the pandemic and the lack of physical access to goods and services that these customers need. So what we're really focused on is, how do we simplify that world for them? How do we simplify the support they receive when, for a first timer, they've never actually understood how to do these things? And so that's been our maniacal focus since COVID. And of course, our associates are impacted as well. Right. And I think that's important because our associates are primarily our customers.
Right.
And so they have to work from home. They have to take care of kids while actually dealing with individual customer issues. And that complexity has really woken us up to simplicity. Is what we need to drive to.
Yeah. No, I think those are really interesting points. And while this is, a comment I'm going to make broader than just financial wellness, I think when you look at, what happened to the mobile world and the take-up of new mobile accounts, people sort of commented, oh, well, we're seeing a drop on the challenger banks and we're seeing a real spike on the traditional banks. And really, that's just largely channel shift, right? I mean, you have a population of consumers at all the major banks, whether those are global, national, or regional, that were happy to work via the branch in a traditional way, and then all of a sudden those options were closed to them, and they had to find ways of things like download the app, understand how to operate it, get familiar with things like the concept of cashing a check while sitting in your living room, right? Like that is a unique concept for many people. Along with kind of just that general growth in mobile, how have you seen just the sheer influx of calls, and how did you prepare the organization, if there's even a way to prepare, but like how did you respond to that? Because I'm sure those calls ranged everything from I forgot my password to something a little bit more complex. And I'd be curious as to how you did that, and Scott as well. I'd be curious as to how you guys dealt with that, or you had an influx as well.
I think one, there was a kind of a cascading effect, two-prong effect. One is we lost the ability to do large call centers in a densely situated environment. So we had to go to social distance settings and work from home capabilities and additional security measures to make sure the customers are protected. So all of those things actually was before the customers even contacted us. But where we saw a large, and I think we saw approximately 3x or more growth in contacts coming in the door, were around stimulus payments. So the same customer base that I mentioned earlier, the underserved and unbanked, were also the heaviest recipient of stimulus, unemployment benefits, et cetera. So you're now looking at customers who are looking for debit services so that they get it faster. IRS sent electronic payments 6 to 8 weeks prior to physical check payments. So customers were signing up at a higher rate, and they're calling. And I think that where the nature of the work changes is not understanding processes that we ourselves may believe are the simplest things. They're the easiest things because we've done them forever and ever and ever.
Right.
But these basic processes are not known. Like registering your account is not the simplest of things. in the world
Sure.
for a customer. And so I think these are the variety of calls and chats and emails and the context support things have changed. But I think what's been consistent is the urgency has exasperated.
Right, right. And are you finding that your customers are coming over a variety of channels? Are they, you know, what sort of channels did you, I mean, right now, do customers contact you over?
Yeah, so again, going back to the previous statement, they'll never want anything slower. What we're seeing is live channels and instant answers are the trick, right? So wherever we have it easily available where they physically are in their life journey.
Right.
So if they're sitting in a store, at a gas station, then most of them are calling the 800 number on the back of the card and trying to get service very quickly. And that's where bulk of the work is. But what we're seeing is a really large shift to the digital channels, which is actually where some of these customers are getting introduced to banking for the first time.
Right.
We are not a branch-based banking services, right? So you register online and you find chats and chatbot and smart FAQs and all of those things. And that's actually the first time they're getting support. But in any case, we're finding instant resolution is what the customers are primarily looking for. I think actually what they're looking for is way more than instant resolution. And it kind of goes back to a philosophy we have in our team. And we're informed by this tenet. So we believe the perfect customer experience is when no help is needed.
Yep.
So actually, majority of the energy we're spending is not on instant solutions, but it's actually never needing help in the first place.
Yep.
So resolving the issues so that you never even have to run into it. The card works the way it's supposed to work, and that's about the end of your interaction with us. And so majority of what we're investing into is removing the root cause of issues.
Right.
But then the immediate second is instant resolution of their concerns.
Makes perfect sense. Scott, how about yourself? Because I would imagine the complexity level is much higher in terms of kind of what your customers are looking to engage you and your team on. So how did you manage that influx?
Yeah, so luckily Western Union is a very global company. So many of us are used to working outside of business hours, and we were pretty well set up for virtual work as a result. So we were able to pivot to work from home very quickly. But on top of that, we've been investing heavily over the last few years in improving digital experiences and driving self-service. So we've worked hard to make our payment processes really intuitive, so people don't have to call us for help.
Right.
And to build out self-service and support capabilities within our platforms. So in the rare event when something does go wrong, they can raise a case with us without having to pick up the phone, which has shifted a lot of that traffic away from voice in towards our platforms themselves, which has been helpful for managing some of these queues. I'll admit, February and March weren't easy, right? When we all pivoted to work from home and all of a sudden all of our business customers more or less had to shut down, at least for a period of time globally. We were getting a lot of calls. And at the same time, there was a tremendous amount of market volatility. And so it was a scary time, I think, for a lot of businesses. And so we worked really hard to make sure they had the best insight we could bring to bear on what was happening in global markets so that they could try to understand and build a strategy that our team was as available as they could be, given high demand. And we just worked through it with customers. We tried to be understanding from a credit perspective. We tried to, much like Aakash mentioned, eliminate exceptions at their root cause, prevent exceptions rather than manage exceptions. Yep. And ultimately, I think it worked. Our customers got through it, and we helped them manage as best as we could.
That's great. That's great. And let me ask you just to double click a little bit on the experience that customers have had. Given the complexity of what they may be, trying to do, do they generally call a specific relationship manager, or do they go to a general sort of contact center agent? I would imagine the former, because just of the complexity of what they might be looking to get help on.
Yeah, we have different models depending on what customers are using us for. Okay. So customers who are just doing payments, who have relatively simple needs, are are managed as a portfolio, and so they'll call a phone number that could go to one of many people.
Okay.
But for most of our customers, they do have a named account manager, and so they're calling their person rather than a call center for help.
Got it. And by the way, I want to make this very interactive, so feel free to ask me questions or each of you questions as well. I want to pick back up on something that Aakash, you mentioned, and Scott, you just did as well, which is around self-service, right? It's something that, you know, we've been talking about within the financial services industry, whether it's consumer banking or commercial banking, insurance, what have you, for a while. I think what COVID has done is it's put a spotlight on those digital gaps, and it's accelerated the need to self. And I say that because for many organizations in financial services, they're not just dealing with the same economic pressures as everyone else, right? Like flatlining to maybe declining, revenues, static to maybe increasing costs. And how do you provide digital services that require investment in light of these sort of challenging situations where certainly for public companies, you're going quarter to quarter to hit your numbers? And how do you kind of figure out what are those priorities that you need to focus on? And most of the customers that we've been talking to, I think, spent the second quarter of this year just kind of reacting to what was happening, figuring out how to get their employees to work from home, figuring out how to do things like the PPP program, and sort of make sure that those financial disbursements are made in a timely fashion, figuring out how to run their business remotely, which to pretty much everyone's surprise, there weren't really any major glitches in doing that. So when you think about self-service now, it tends to be in the top 3 of sort of conversations that we're having. And I'd be curious as to, has it always been a priority? And kind of where is it now? Like, are you doubling down? So in other words, if you did self-service, are you looking at conversational AI, or maybe you're already into doing conversational AI? What's the next big thing you're thinking about?
Scott, I'll let you go first.
Sure. So I think about self-service in a couple of ways. One is the best way to self-serve is to make your platform so easy to use that customers don't have to ask for help. So that really, from a product development perspective, just requires a relentless focus on usability and user experience. And that's not an endpoint, it's a journey, right? You can always do better. And so part of what we do is make sure we have some resources always focused on trying to make that process a little bit easier, trying to remove friction from our customers' interactions with us. And a lot of that is data-driven, right? You instrument your platforms, you look at your web analytics, you understand where people are getting stuck. Right. You try different things to get them unstuck. Right. But on top of that, things will go wrong, right? In financial services, we're all dependent on other counterparties, and not everyone is flawless. And so we've really tried to make as much of that interaction asynchronous as possible by essentially allowing our customers to raise a case with us. Given that in many cases, to go investigate an exception, it's not something we can necessarily do end-to-end on our own. We have to go out to the counterparties we work with to understand, say, where a payment is or why a lifting fee was assessed by one of our intermediaries.
Sure.
And so allowing customers to raise that case and then providing frequent updates through our support portal has worked really well. And again, it's another user journey. So it's another area where we're relentlessly focused on usability and trying to make that process as intuitive and easy as possible, so that customers don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it. Ultimately, no one sends payments just to send payments. We recognize we are serving larger business processes. Right. And so trying to make every interaction with us as efficient as possible so they can get on to living their lives, managing their business is a big priority for us. And so I think that focus on usability and on taking things that would have taken a phone call in the past and making them more asynchronous, where they can log a request and then come back and look at the status a little bit later, has worked really well for us.
Great. Great.
Yeah, and what I'd like to say is, first, as a publicly traded company, you mentioned, has this been difficult investment? I think the first thing is, in 2020, if you're a company not obsessed over the customers, you have a very short life left. And so I think we're in a human era now. I think financial services in particular has been sort of slow to adopt. If I've had experience in larger banks as leading digital experiences in the past. We were trying to change the DNA of the company to think digital, and because customers were already there, they were demanding it, and then
Right.
there was kind of a slow roll. Today we serve companies who were born in this, right?
Yep.
You think about the Apple and the Uber. There wasn't a branch once for Uber, and then it became an app. They were born in this, right? And
Right.
so their customers are born in it, and that's who we serve. So I think um, it's really not much of a debate in our world on investing into this because customers expect it. I think the second associated thought here is that our customers are now, when I think about self-service, there's kind of three components to it. One is the basic tools of banking and payments. They work as designed, and that requires a focus, like Scott mentioned. Then there's when that doesn't go well, you need basic ability to get support in instant solutions that are self-service. And the self-service is really important. The second benefit, and it might be very obvious for folks, but you can actually scale your operational elements through technology once you start offering self-service, right?
Right.
And there's sort of a third thing to it, which I think it's absolutely the most exciting part of all of our jobs. I'm sure those listening can associate with this, but someone right now is on Netflix or Amazon Prime and scrolling through a million videos in a really quick manner, getting to the movie that they want or the show they want, like this, and it's personalized to individual.
Yep.
That sets an expectation of how a banking app should work. That sets an expectation of a simple interaction over the phone or in a chat, etc. It is not. We're no longer in a information era. We're in the human era, where the expectations aren't increasing because of what other banks or other payment industries are doing. They're
Yeah.
increasing because of their day-to-day life, and they
Right.
have very little patience. Customers do very little patience for things not working. When you can scroll a million movies in a snap of a finger on Netflix, they expect they could do the same work transactions on their online bank account. And I think that's the point that's really honestly Scott, I think, was making is you're never done. When you surround around customers, you will
Yeah.
always lag their expectations, which will make you better than whoever else isn't focused on the customer.
Yeah, you point out something really important, which is that behavioral shift has already occurred in
Yep.
our personal lives, right? And so it's only makes sense that those expectations shift in our professional lives, in kind of the tools that we interact with, and that transcends demographics,
Yep.
right? So no matter kind of where you are in life and what your bank account holds, we are now digitally native in many ways in which we want to operate. So let me ask a question to both of you, and ask a little bit about some of the technologies that you guys are actively leveraging for engaging with customers. I'd be curious to know, from a communications point of view, selfishly, what are some of the things that you guys are leveraging or plan to leverage?
Yeah, so obviously, Bijon, that we're long-term partners with Twilio, and we use the Twilio communication platform to build smart IVRs, native language, ability for customers to do more complex things in the IVR. As I mentioned, instant
Right.
solutions matter. So if all you could say is, I need to replace a card, and you can verify everything that the automated system read out to you. They prefer that compared to waiting on hold. Now, these are the same customers who are waiting on hold with, say, the Social Security office for 2 hours.
Right.
But they're frustrated there. The last thing we want to do is meet that low of a bar, right?
Right.
And so we're not just doing that, but we're also getting into sort of proactive messages related to your financial journey. So as an example, if you're getting really close to zero balance, on your card? How can we proactively let you know that so you never have to experience a decline because of an insufficient fund? Or another thing that we've actually offered as an industry for nearly 11 plus years, or maybe even longer, if I recollect incorrectly, early direct deposit. So you're actually getting a deposit 2 days early if you had a bank account with Green Dot versus Chase, Citi, Bank of America, Wells, any of the large institutions. And that's all around sort of digital solutions when you don't even necessarily think about it as a communication tool for support, but you are communicating to them that, hey, money just arrived 2 days early.
Right.
Go ahead and continue spending. And then people build their budgets on that. So I think that's kind of where our mind is going when it comes to sort of these solutions, is how do we go to their journey instead of having them adopt our journey and our processes.
Right, right. Yeah, it's sort of, we say, we help customers meet their clients over the channel of their choosing.
Correct.
So you want to be there where your customer wants to meet you.
Exactly.
How about you, Scott?
Yeah, so I think part of our duty of care for our customers is helping them understand these really complex and somewhat technical FX markets. And so we try to push information to our customers in a timely fashion through as many channels as possible. So that could be, we send out daily updates. They're available in our platforms. We send them over email. We tweet them from time to time on things like central bank announcements, unemployment numbers, the sort of things that move markets that can affect FX rates, and try to give them a preview of what's coming so they can manage that day-to-day risk. We also, we provide a lot of content over webinars. We make a lot of phone calls. We send a lot of email, really trying to touch customers through as many channels as possible to help familiarize themselves with these complex topics, and really help them understand when they need to take some action based on whatever happens to be happening in the broader market dynamics. Ultimately, we really like the in-platform option. I think that that's convenient for customers because they're already thinking about this part of their value stream when they're coming in to make payments. But we try to make that information available through as many channels as possible. From a interaction perspective, in terms of, say, fielding questions, we're still pretty phone-based. I'll admit we handle a lot of interactions over email. We haven't yet adopted live chat in our business payments division, although the consumer payment side of Western Union uses it pretty extensively. And frankly, we don't see a whole lot of demand for it from our customers thus far. They seem pretty happy to be able to pick up the phone and call their person. We'll see how that evolves, I think, given the changing digital expectations.
Scott, do you find that your customers are actually doing business from home, and thus they're kind of toggling multiple different duties, right? They're doing their home duties, probably having kids watching, TV or doing their online schooling, while they're also toggling their businesses. And in a situation like that, getting on a call is pretty disruptive, but instead they can kind of have a multi-screen ability to get support. Have you found that to be a trend?
Yeah, absolutely. This year, definitely, since COVID. And I think for our account managers, seeing a kid walk through the background has become pretty routine in the day-to-day interactions. We're all over the dog these days. But even outside of COVID, a lot of small business owners are very busy. And so we've worked hard to make sure all of our applications work well on phones.
Right.
So that, say, a lot of our businesses will have two people involved in the transaction. So someone who will initiate it, and then the owner comes in to approve it to make sure that they're not being defrauded. And making that approval something you can do really easy on a phone has been important for us because they're busy. A lot of times they'll be visiting a customer or out on their shop floor rather than sitting at a desk when they need to take these actions.
Right. Excellent. Before we wrap up and open it up to questions, I just had one final sort of question for each of you, and that's really around kind of what are your priorities for the balance of this year and 2021. To the degree you can share, love to, just given the customer-centric nature of both your organizations, I think it would be really insightful for our listeners to get an idea of, given all the turbulence and change in the industry, what are the priorities for each of you?
Well, look, I think I can't disclose too much of very specifics, clearly, for many good reasons others can understand. But we have some really exciting things coming down the pipeline. And really, it's all surrounded around how do we enable and empower customers in the underserved and underbanked areas and unbanked. And I think about all the gig jobs that have really grown over the last, say, 6-7 years, but have probably had a hockey stick effect in 2020 because of COVID. Those are the ones that we have. We're thinking about payment solutions and how do we go where they are. As an example, we have a pay card business that now small employer bases are paying their employees in debit card. So we can actually offer those debit card services where the money goes. Now, these are usually gig workers who typically get cash or checks that they have to figure out how to access. So that's where a lot of our mind is going, in sort of proactive communications so that they don't get stuck anywhere. And then I think secondly, empowering them with new solutions that I think, frankly, the industry has not served this customer base all that much.
Right. How about you, Scott?
So I think there's a lot of unknowns as we exit COVID for businesses. I expect that supply chains will be changing pretty significantly, that we'll see a lot of diversification from that perspective. I also expect the economy will take off too in a more cross-border way than it's been before, as we all get accustomed to working virtually. It doesn't so much matter if the best person for a job is in your city or even in your country. And so, not knowing how that's all going to shape up, we're focused on diversifying our correspondent network, making sure that we can efficiently get money to as many countries as possible, quickly and in a cost-effective way, really to make sure that we're prepared for whatever emerges after COVID. On top of that, and the previously mentioned relentless focus on digital experience, we also recently launched a new product in our education space. So we offer a product that allows universities to collect tuition from international students. The students can pay in their local currency. With COVID, we've noticed an increased need for refunds. So in a lot of countries, you have to prepay a portion of your tuition in order to qualify for a visa. And so there's been a lot of visa denials and a lot of schools that just aren't operating in the normal fashion. And so we really quickly built out the ability to send refunds.
Wow.
Which has been a great solution for our university partners. And we think there's a lot we can do in that space. And so that'll be a continued area of focus for us in the coming months.
I think the whole educational space is ripe for some disruption as well, even if it's on the edges in the near term. So I want to thank you both. We're going to open it up to questions. And let me ask Lisa if there are some questions from the audience. Okay, there is a question here, and it comes from one of our guests here. If you were a startup and could only offer 3 channels of support at launch, what would you choose?
Yeah, I guess it's not the simplest of questions to answer, because it depends on who your customer is and what you're trying to accomplish for them. But I would say that I would lean towards very instant solution type offerings. So I think phone is something, regardless of where you are in your digital journey, it's something you have to offer for instant and urgent needs. But you can build infrastructure around chat and email, especially if you can prove that you're going to get quick responses and thorough responses. One of the downsides of live channel support is that you may not get a resolution on first shot. And that's actually what really frustrates customers.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it depends on who your customer target is, but I would focus on instant solutions, whether it's a person channel or a non-person automated channel. And then the second thing I would focus your energy on is high resolution rate of the issue. If you get those 2 things right, it almost doesn't matter how you offer it.
Right. And this individual is saying it was a challenger bank in his example. So, well, thank you for that. And I see we are pretty much at the end of our time here. I hope our audience who participated enjoyed the conversation. If you have questions, certainly reach out to us. I'm sure the organizers will help connect Aakash and Scott to any of you. And with that, I will say good night and pass it on to our next set of speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.